Deus virtutum convertere et Domine converte nos. Respice de celo et vide et visita vineam istam et protegeam quam plantavi dextera tua. Illustra faciem tuam et salvierimus. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater, et Filius, et Spiritus Sanctus.
Pope Leo XIV issues a bold warning. 5 things Catholic women shouldn't wear. They say modesty is a lost virtue, a relic of the past. But what if I told you that a powerful voice in the Church has just reignited a firestorm? Pope Leo XIV has stepped forward with a bold, unapologetic message for Catholic women around the world. Stop wearing these 5 things now. Your soul could depend on it. This isn't about judgment. It's about sacred identity, spiritual dignity, and the war for the human heart. In a world drowning in trends, the Pope's words cut like a sword of truth, calling women back to holiness, beauty, and purpose. What are these garments? Why are they spiritually dangerous? And why is the Pope speaking out? Now, before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. What you're about to learn could change your life. The sacred thread rediscovering the lost meaning of modesty. In the echoing halls of St. Peter's Basilica, a silence fell over the room as Pope Leo XIV stepped up to the podium. There was no mistaking the gravity of what he was about to say. Cameras clicked. Cardinals shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and the world watching from afar held its breath. His eyes, deep and burdened, scanned the room, not with anger, but with love. Then he spoke, not with thunder, but with fire. The way we dress reflects the state of our soul. The modern world has forgotten this sacred truth, but heaven has not. And with that, he began his message, not a condemnation, but a plea to return to holiness. The Pope's warning was not born from tradition alone. It came from a deep spiritual concern, the erosion of feminine dignity in the modern era. Our daughters, he said, are being raised in a culture that teaches them to be seen but not respected, exposed but not honored. He spoke of sacred femininity not as something to be hidden, but something so precious, so radiant that it must to be protected. True beauty, he said, is not found in what is revealed to the eyes of men, but in what is reserved for the eyes of God. This wasn't about outdated rules or superficial dress codes. It was about the soul. The Pope recounted the stories of saints, Street Maria Geredi, Street, Gianna, Beretta, Mola, and even the Blessed Virgin herself, women who stood as icons of purity and courage in the face of cultural pressure. Modesty, he continued, is not weakness. It is strength wrapped in humility. He emphasized that dressing modestly is not a prison. It is liberation from the chains of worldly validation. He then addressed the storm of confusion that has swept over Catholic women, especially the young. Social media, fashion influencers, and pop culture often mock the idea of modesty as repressive or old-fashioned. But the Pope called for spiritual clarity. You are not here to entertain the world, he said. You are here to awaken it. He implored women to remember that their bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, not tools for attention or exploitation. You were made for more than likes, comments, and fleeting glances. You were made for eternal glory. As he paused, a holy silence swept across the crowd. And then he delivered the line that would make headlines around the globe. There are 5 things Catholic women must stop wearing, not because you are being judged, but because you are being loved. It was not a rule book. It was a rescue mission for daughters, sisters, and mothers who have unknowingly traded sacred beauty for cultural approval. He raised a rosary in his hand and said gently, "This is your armor, not your fashion, not your followers, but your faith." And in that moment, something stirred, not just in the Vatican, but in the hearts of Catholic women watching around the world. A line had been drawn not between good and bad fashion, but between sacred identity and spiritual amnesia. Continuing in the same cinematic, emotional, and reflective tone, the first warning, the cult of skin-tight clothing. The world calls it confidence. The Church calls it confusion. In his address, Pope Leo XIV did not mince words when he named the first item Catholic women should stop wearing skin-tight clothing. Not because it's ugly, not because it's unfashionable, but because it turns the sacred into spectacle. When clothing clings like a second skin, he declared, it no longer covers. It reveals, it speaks not of dignity, but of demand for attention, for validation, for fleeting praise. He paused after that line, letting the weight of it settle into the hearts of his listeners. The silence was thunderous. This wasn't about shaming the body, far from it. The Pope made it clear, the female body is a masterpiece of creation, a temple, a tabernacle of life. But even the tabernacle has a veil, he added softly. Because what it holds is too sacred to be exposed, he spoke directly to the rising generation of Catholic girls, many of whom are trapped in a culture that worships the body but ignores the soul. Yoga pants, bodycon dresses, ultra-fitted jeans, these aren't just clothes, he said. They are cultural catechisms. They teach young women, often unconsciously, that their worth is in their curves, not in their character. It is not your shape that defines you. The Pope said, but your soul. He recalled a heartbreaking encounter with a young girl in Milan. She confessed that she didn't want to dress the way she did. But everyone else does, she said, and I don't want to be invisible. That moment stayed with him, not because it was rare, but because it was tragically common. Women are pressured to wear what is provocative just to be noticed. But at what cost? When the world sees only your form, the Pope said, they stop seeing your soul. Pope Leo XIV was careful to add, this isn't about rejecting beauty, it's about reclaiming it. True beauty never shouts. It whispers. It points beyond the body toward the Creator. You don't have to. Trade your dignity for relevance. He told them, you don't have to shrink your standards to fit into a broken culture. You were born to stand out not because of what you wear, but because of the light that shines through what you choose not to wear. And for those who scoffed at his message, calling it unrealistic or old-fashioned, the Pope offered this response. If the cross of Christ still stands, then so must modesty. Because both are signs of love that suffers, love that sacrifices, love that dares to protect what is holy. He closed his reflection with an invitation, not a command. Let your wardrobe preach your worth. Let your fashion testify to your faith. And with that, the first piece of the puzzle was laid. This wasn't about fabric. It was about formation and for those with ears to hear. The call was clear. Dress not for the crowd, but for the King. The second warning, the rise of revealing church attire. The sacred Mass is not a fashion runway. It is the representation of Calvary, a place where heaven kisses earth and souls are lifted toward eternity. But Pope Leo XIV could no longer ignore what he had witnessed across the Catholic world. A growing trend of women arriving at the altar dressed more for attention than adoration. We have forgotten, he said with sorrow, that the Eucharist is a miracle, and we come before it as if we are entering a café, not the court of the King. He named the second critical warning. Catholic women must stop wearing revealing clothing to church, plunging necklines, bare shoulders, mini skirts, or thin sheer fabrics that leave little to the imagination. Would you dress like this before Christ on his cross? The Pope asked solemnly. Because at every Mass you are before him, he is not an idea. He is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity. It wasn't merely about the clothes themselves, but the posture of the heart. When modesty is abandoned in the one place meant to be wholly sacred, it's not just a fashion crisis, it's a spiritual crisis. Pope Leo XIV recounted his visit to a cathedral in France, where an elderly woman wept outside the door. She had grown up in an era when veils were worn, voices were hushed, and women dressed like they were stepping into heaven. Now, she said, it feels like a nightclub before a miracle. The Pope did not speak from a place of legalism, but from deep pastoral love. He emphasized that church attire is not about looking old-fashioned. It's about reflecting reverence. Your dress, he said, should never distract others from the Eucharist. It should lead hearts toward him, not away. The sanctuary is not a stage for self-expression, he warned. It is holy ground. And when we dress without awareness, we may unknowingly participate in profaning what is sacred. He spoke with compassion to the many who simply never knew, those who had no one to teach them, mothers who weren't taught by their mothers, daughters who didn't know what was appropriate. But ignorance is not a curse. The Pope reminded, it is an invitation to learn. He called upon Catholic women to become examples to one another, to reclaim reverence, not only in their hearts, but also in their closets. He didn't stop there. He challenged priests and parish leaders to speak up with love, not shame, and to catechize the faithful on the dignity of worship. Silence has allowed irreverence to become normal, he lamented. But silence is not love. Truth is love. He ended with a piercing question. If angels veil themselves in the presence of God, how can we uncover ourselves in his house? The weight of that sentence lingered. It was a reminder that modesty is not oppression, it is adoration. And for every Catholic woman listening, it was a call to rise, to lead others, not only through prayer, but through presence, purity, and holy example. The third warning, the hidden danger of immodest swimwear, the ocean waves, the summer sun, the warmth of vacation. These are gifts from God. But even in leisure, the soul does not take a break from holiness. Pope Leo XIV turned the world's gaze to a domain many avoid discussing: the beach, the pool, and the way Catholic women dress when no one expects reverence. His third warning was clear. Catholic women must stop wearing immodest swimwear, especially bikinis. For some, it sounded extreme. For others, outdated, but for the Pope, it was not about nostalgia. It was about souls. The dignity of the daughter of God does not dissolve under the sun. He proclaimed, her body remains sacred, clothed or unclothed. It belongs not to the crowd, but to Christ. His words pierced deeper than skin. They struck the heart of a modern crisis, the normalization of near nudity as freedom. He told a story that silenced the room, a mother who approached him during a pilgrimage in Rome. Her teenage daughter had refused to go on their family beach vacation unless she was allowed to wear what all the other girls wore. The mother wept as she explained how torn she felt between not wanting to shame her child and not wanting to betray her conscience. The Pope looked her in the eyes and said, "It is not love to let her be consumed. It is love to teach her she is more than what she shows." He then quoted St. John Paul II. The problem with pornography is not that it shows too much, but that it shows too little of the person. Pope Leo XIV extended this to modern swimwear. When a woman wears what reveals everything, she hides her true identity. She becomes an image, not an icon. And in a world saturated with lust, where men are taught to consume and women are taught to perform, the Pope called for a rebellion, a modesty revolution. He acknowledged the pressure, the ridicule modest women face, the judgment, even the rejection. But you were not made to fit in with Babylon. He said you were made to shine in Zion. He reminded women that their clothing doesn't just affect them, it affects others. You may never know the man who looks at you and is tempted to sin. But heaven sees, and love must be willing to carry that burden for him and for Christ. The Pope offered practical advice. Wear swimwear that respects the dignity of the body. Choose styles that cover more, not less. Let joy and modesty coexist, not as enemies, but as partners. He even called for Catholic designers to rise up and create elegant, beautiful, modest swimwear options. Fashion need not be impure to be admired. He said, "Let it be holy, let it glorify God." The chapter ended with a challenge. This summer, don't undress your soul to cool your body. Let your dignity be your covering, and you will never feel more radiant. And with that, a seed was planted, not just in minds, but in closets, on beaches, and in the quiet decisions of hearts, ready to live counterculturally. The fourth warning, the seduction of provocative fashion trends. Fashion is a language, and every outfit speaks. Some whisper grace, others shout rebellion. Pope Leo XIV's fourth warning pierced the modern wardrobe with precision. Catholic women must stop wearing provocative fashion trends that glorify lust over love, pride over purity, and ego over eternity. These aren't just clothes, he explained. They are costumes worn in a spiritual drama where souls are either drawn to God or dragged toward vanity. He referenced the catwalks of Milan, New York, and Paris, the birthplaces of the world's most influential styles. The fashion industry, the Pope said, has ceased to celebrate the woman. It now exploits her. The less she wears, the more she is praised. Not for her soul, but for her shape. Not for her virtue, but for her seduction. The room fell silent as he raised his voice slightly. What you wear can become either a hymn to heaven or a billboard for hell. Short skirts, sheer tops, crop tops, cutouts that expose more than they conceal, stilettos designed to allure. These have become everyday fashion statements. But the Pope saw in them something deeper, a slow erosion of the sacred feminine. He was not condemning women, but defending them. You were not made to arouse, he said gently. You were made to awaken, to call others to what is pure, noble, eternal. He pointed to the scriptures. A woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man. Deuteronomy 22:5. While often misused, this verse, he explained, reveals a deeper truth. Clothing is not just fabric, carries moral and spiritual weight. And in today's world, many women have been taught to dress not for dignity, but for domination. You must ask yourself, he said, is this drawing attention to me or to the God who lives in me? He acknowledged that not every woman chooses her clothes out of pride or rebellion. Many simply follow the culture unaware. But now you know, the Pope said. Now you've heard, and now you must decide. Will you follow the trend or the truth? He addressed men too, urging them to stop pressuring women to dress in a way that excites carnal appetite. You are called to be protectors, not predators, he said. If you truly love her, you will guard her modesty like a treasure. And to mothers, he gave a special call. Dress your daughters like royalty. For if they are trained to seek male attention through their bodies, they will starve for love their whole lives. The Pope ended this part of his address with a line that rippled across the Catholic world. Modesty is not about hiding your beauty. It is about revealing your worth. In a world where provocative has become popular, he offered a new standard, not of repression, but of restoration. Let your fashion preach purity. Let your silhouette speak serenity. Let your wardrobe say, I belong to the King. The final warning, the veil forgotten. Why head coverings still matter. It was the quietest warning, yet perhaps the most profound. Pope Leo XIV looked across the sea of faithful women and gently spoke the words many had never expected to hear in their lifetime. Catholic women must reconsider the sacred tradition of wearing the veil. It was not a command but a tender invitation, an echo from the early church, a whisper from centuries past. The veil, he said, is not cloth. It is a crown of reverence. In a world obsessed with exposure, the Pope called women to the opposite, to mystery. The veil doesn't hide your dignity, he explained. It proclaims it. You veil what is sacred, not what is shameful. Just as the tabernacle is veiled, just as the Holy of Holies was once hidden behind a curtain, the female soul and body, symbols of life, grace, and beauty, deserve the same reverence. He recounted a visit to a small village in Nigeria, where a group of elderly women still wore lace veils to Massachusetts. We wear them. One of them said, because when we stand before God, we want Him to see our humility, not our hair. That sentence, spoken in simplicity, struck the Pope like thunder. The veil, he said, is the language of humility in a generation that speaks only pride. He acknowledged the discomfort, the fear of ridicule, the concern of appearing outdated, but he responded with strength. The cross is never fashionable, and neither is holiness, but they are always glorious. He urged Catholic women, not all, but those who feel the stirring, to embrace the veil, especially in the presence of the Eucharist. It is not mandatory, he said, but it is majestic. This final warning was not about legalism or oppression. It was about reclaiming forgotten beauty. The Pope explained that the veil is not just for grandmothers or the overly pious. It's for every woman who dares to stand apart to remind the world that heaven's ways are not man's ways. The world told you to let your hair down, he said, but Christ invites you to lift your soul up. He also addressed a deeper truth, that modesty is not only what you cover, but why you cover it. The veil becomes a physical act of interior surrender, a sign that the woman beneath it recognizes her power, her influence, and her sanctity. The veil doesn't erase your voice. The Pope said it amplifies your message. I am God's, and I bow before no one but Him. In closing, Pope Leo XIV looked directly into the camera, as if he was looking into every living room, every smartphone, every searching heart, and he said, Catholic women, you are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are not too far gone. Heaven is calling you back, not to rules, but to radiance. And with that, his voice softened. Let your wardrobe be your witness. Let your clothing preach Christ. Let your modesty awaken a world that has forgotten wonder. The time to rise in holiness is now. The revolution begins not in politics, not in the streets, but in the closet of every daughter of God.